Welcome back to another lesson for our sentence structure series. This is our 7th lesson. Can you believe that? If you happen to stumble upon this video without having watched our previous videos in the series, I suggest that you try watching them first because every lesson builds up on another. That means it will be hard for you to understand this lesson if you haven't watched the previous lessons. For this lesson, we will be talking about noun clauses. This is our last lesson on clauses. After this, we will be ready to expand our sentences, and that's going to be our next lesson. Okay, enough talking. Let's jump right into it. Let's look at this dialogue. Who spoke in this year's conference? I don't know. But I know who spoke in last year's conference. I'm really interested in who the speaker is for this year's conference. What is said about climate change is intriguing. Okay, in some of these sentences, we can see noun clauses. Let's identify and discuss them. The first one is, who spoke in last year's conference? It looks like a question because it starts with a who. In fact, it is a similar structure to the question in the first sentence. Who spoke in this year's conference? But what's the difference? It is the direct object of the verb know. Know who. Remember, nouns act as subjects, direct objects, objects of prepositions, and subject complement. Big words, right? Don't worry, we'll have more examples later. Anyway, going back, our second noun clause is in the third sentence. Can you spot it? Who the speaker is for this year's conference. Again, it looks and sounds like a question. Who is the speaker for this year's conference? The only difference is we put the verb is after the subject. Like in the previous example, this noun clause is an object. But this time, not a direct object. It's the object of the preposition in. Interested in what or who? Therefore, it acts as a noun. Okay, now let's go to the fourth sentence. Can you guess where the noun clause is? Yes, what he said about climate change is a noun clause. This time, the noun clause starts with a what. And again, it is in the form of a question. If we're going to make this a question, it will be, what did he say about climate change? Very similar, right? The only difference is the addition of did. Now, what part of the sentence is the noun clause? Is it the direct object? Nope. Is it the object of the preposition? No. So what is it? It's the subject. What is said about climate change is the subject, is the verb, intriguing is the subject complement. So those are some examples of a noun clause. After looking at these examples, the next question is, what is a noun clause? A noun clause is a clause that acts as a noun in a sentence. It is a clause because it has a subject and a verb. It is a noun because it acts as a noun in a sentence. And how does a noun function in a sentence? It can be the subject, direct object, subject complement, or object of a preposition. If you forgot what these things are, I suggest you revisit the second lesson in our series, Simple Sentence, where I talked about them in detail. Anyway, let's see how we can use a noun clause as a subject, direct object, subject complement, and an object of a preposition. Let's use the same noun clause, what you eat. What you eat is very important. So what you eat is the subject, is the verb, very important is the subject complement. You are what you eat. You is the subject, are is the verb, what you eat is the subject complement. You should watch what you eat. You is the subject, should watch is the verb, and what you eat is the direct object of watch. You should be careful of what you eat. You is the subject, should be is the verb, careful is the subject complement. But careful here comes with the preposition of. Careful of what? What you eat. So what you eat here is the object of the preposition of. In the examples we have seen so far, we have used who and what noun clauses. But actually, noun clauses can begin with other words like who, what, when, where, why, how, or their ever equivalents, whoever, whatever, whenever, wherever, however, or conjunctions for conditions like if and whether, or even relative pronouns like that, which, who, whom, and whose. Yes, it can be confusing because noun clauses can also look like relative clauses. But the key here is how they are used in the sentence. Are they used as an adjective or a noun? Because remember, relative clauses act as adjectives. Okay, in the next part of our lesson, I want to teach you how to form noun clauses using questions. Let's start with WH questions. Who are you? What did you do? When do you go to the market? Where are you going? Why haven't you finished it? How will you do it? So we have the 6 most common WH questions and we're using different tenses. Did you notice that? Now let's put them side by side with their noun clause equivalent. There you go. Okay, so what did you notice about our noun clauses? How are they different from the questions in terms of structure? First, the subject comes before the verb. Instead of writing, I don't know who are you, we write, I don't know who you are. He is asking where you are going, subject first, instead of he's asking where are you going. I'm curious about why you haven't finished it, subject first, instead of I'm curious why haven't you finished it. Does your mother know how you will do it? Not, does your mother know how will you do it? Also, no auxiliary verbs do, does, or did. Like in the second and third example, what you did is good, not what did you do is good. I want to know when you go to the market, not I want to know when do you go to the market. So make sure you drop the auxiliary verbs do, does, or did. Also notice that in the first 5 sentences we didn't use a question mark because they are no longer questions. We've changed them into noun clauses and they are now part of declarative sentences. But for the how clause, our last example, we put a question mark because it is a question. A yes-no question. Speaking of a yes-no question, now let's look at how we can change yes-no questions to noun clauses. For the first one, is he already sleeping? I don't know if he is already sleeping. If he is already sleeping is the noun clause. And it is the direct object of the verb don't know. But what did you notice about it? Yes, we used if. So remember, we use if when we are turning a yes-no question to a noun clause. Just like in WH noun clauses, the subject comes before the verb. Okay, let's move on to the second one. Have you seen their newest video? Okay, pause this video right here and give it a try. Okay, here is its noun clause equivalent. I am wondering if you have seen their newest video. If you have seen their newest video is the noun clause. And what did we do with the order of the subject and the verb? That's right. The subject comes first. If you have seen. Next, do they celebrate Mother's Day? Again, try it for yourself. Okay, this is how we turn this yes-no question into a noun clause. No one knows if they celebrate Mother's Day. Again, we use if they celebrate Mother's Day as the direct object of the verb knows. And do you notice anything about the verb? We removed the auxiliary verb do. Okay, next. In the first three examples, we used the noun clauses as direct objects, right? Which is how we normally use noun clauses. Now, let's try to make it the subject. Whether she talked to her father is my concern. Whether she talked to her father is the subject, is the verb, and my concern is the subject complement. So if we're using the yes-no question as a subject, we have to use whether instead of if. And you can also notice that we removed the auxiliary verb did. Hence, our verb became talked. Okay, last example. Again, let's try to turn it into a subject so that you can practice some more. Yeah, pause this video and try to do it. Okay, whether or not he will be enrolling next semester is an important matter. Okay, let's start with the most obvious thing we can observe. This time, we didn't just use whether, we added an or not. Whether or not. So this is one thing you can do to emphasize that there are two options, yes or no. You can't do this with if. You don't say if or not. You can only do this with whether. Is that clear? And how about the verb? Yeah, we moved will so that the subject would come first before the verb. Subject comes first before the verb whenever we use a noun clause. Remember that. And that is the end of our video. I would like to go on and teach you more ways to write noun clauses, but my goal in this video is simply to make you aware of noun clauses and at the same time help you get started in writing them. Later on, you can explore for yourself how you can use other forms of noun clauses. Also, I know this can be too much to swallow if you don't have a chance to practice what you learned. I know I sound like a broken record when I say use it or lose it, but I mean it. Writing correct sentences is a skill, and you develop skills by practice. Lots of practice. You know, you don't improve in playing basketball just by watching NBA, right? You have to be there in the court and practice regularly. So in the same way, you can't expect yourself to improve after watching a grammar video lesson. You have to practice. There's no other way. Speaking of which, these are your assignments. First, find 5 sentences that contain noun clauses from the books you're reading. Again, don't find them from grammar books or grammar websites. Then, write 5 WH questions and turn them into WH clauses like what we did in the examples. So I want to see the question first, then the noun clause used in a sentence. Write 5 of them. And I want you to do the same for yes/no questions. Write 5 yes/no questions, then 5 if or whether noun clauses. I repeat, noun clauses. Don't use them as conjunctions for conditions, okay? Alright, I'm looking forward to reading your assignments. But bye for now, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.